The ink blot tests. What are those called?
Rorschach tests.
So when you look at those shapes, the goal is to take something, project whatever you're thinking onto those shapes. You identify what you see in those shapes. They don't really have any sort of form by themselves. I think that's what this series is. The people who are saying that they're loving it, it's because they're bringing in their own projections into this. They're seeing these ink blobs on the screen that kind of look like Riker, kind of look like Picard, and they're adding all this extra stuff to it. And I think that's why we're seeing people saying, oh my God, this is fantastic. And when one tries to sit down and say, but look what they're doing. Look at the ridiculous lines coming out of their mouths. Look at all this. And they're like, well, sure, it's not perfect, but it's really good. But it's not really good. Yeah, but it's better than the first 2 seasons. Yeah, but it's not. It really isn't any better than the first 2 seasons. Terry Matalas should not be given another season of this or another series. They're talking about this Dominion War. If you're a Deep Space Nine fan, do you really want Terry Matalas digging his claws into that? That lore, Deep Space Nine, up until this season, has mostly been safe. Do you really want him digging into that? Really? Terry Matalas has shown me he is a hack just like the hacks that came before him. He is Alex Kurtzman with a different face. Maybe he's a changeling and it's Alex Kurtzman behind the scenes. I hope Terry Matalas is done with Star Trek after this season. We are 60% in. This is not going to get better. It's just not. Molly and I were talking. We don't know if this is for sure. But when Geordi mentioned about that Wi-Fi or whatever that he called it, how ships communicate with each other and that's how you're going to be able to figure out somebody's location, that somehow is different than the transponder. And if you remember from our last week review, when we suggested they were going to steal from the new Battlestar Galactica. Oh my gosh, all these new ships have this technology I guess you can't rip out of it. But hey, the old ships don't have networking. They're before networking, this type of network. So I hope that I'm way wrong and I'm just thinking worst case here. But I hope they don't haul their ass to that museum and jumpstart one or several of those ships and rip off Battlestar Galactica. Because I joked about it last week. Now I'm starting to get pissed off if they actually do it. This show is such a joke. It is a joke. I do not understand people who are getting moved by the music or the characters. I get it. I get it. Living in the past in good times is a good thing. But I want to move forward with Star Trek. Do new things. Just don't crap on the past. Terry Matalas is crapping on the past. It's been said that Terry Matalas is this huge Star Trek fan. Which Star Trek? Not what he worked on. Which Star Trek is he a fan of? I'm guessing Deep Space Nine because I think Terry Matalas hates The Next Generation. Because what I'm seeing on screen shows a latent hatred toward the source material. I don't know Terry Matalas. I'm looking at his work and I don't like it. I don't see this as any different than what came before in the previous 2 seasons. This guy's a hack, just like Alex Kurtzman, and I do not want this guy continuing with this franchise after episode 10. And if you don't agree with that, I don't know what to tell you. We are definitely on different sides of the street here, because this is not cutting-edge science fiction. This is not. Go back and watch The Expanse. 2015, I think, was the first season of that. Go watch that! 2015! Tell me that's not better than this. By a bunch. In 2023, this is the best cutting-edge science fiction. It's not perfect. You know what? It's not only not perfect, it's not good either. Sorry, Molly. I'm getting so sick. I don't mind people having differing opinions, but when people start calling us haters, they don't know who we are, where we came from, how many decades like they are. We watched Star Trek through the decades. I have a personal story just like all of you on how I watched Star Trek when I was a little kid. First run. So do not dump your shit on our wall and tell us that we're just a bunch of haters. This upsets me that this is what Star Trek is now. And I want Terry Matalas out of here. I want Secret Hideout out of here. If that means 10 years this franchise goes to sleep, I don't know if I'm going to live that long, but if I am sitting in some really old nursing home, at least when I stick on Star Trek, it'll actually warm me inside instead of this crap. How can you have a conversation with somebody who thinks art is objectively looked at? How do you do that? How do you have a conversation with somebody
You can't.
who doesn't know the difference between objective and subjective?
You can't.
Or literal and figurative?
You cannot.
If you can't agree on language, how can you have a conversation with people? How many times in our comments have people said, this season is objectively better? There's no way to prove that. Art is not objective. You don't have a ruler. Objective means you have a ruler you can hold it to. If I say this pencil weighs 1 pound and you say it weighs 10 pounds, it's a big pencil, first of all. But you have to stick it on a scale where we agree on what a pound is for it to give me an objective number to say, based on what pounds are, this is how heavy this pencil is. But when I say this pencil is beautiful, there's no way. Going back to Star Trek lore, when Spock was asked in Star Trek 4, when he was getting re-educated, and he was being asked all these science questions, and he came up with objective answers, scientific answers to problems. And the last question he got stumped on is, how do you feel? And then Spock was like, I don't understand how to answer that question. That's because it's subjective. It took the end of that movie for him to understand, how do I feel? I feel fine. That's subjective. We're talking to people in the comments who think objective and subjective are the same thing, who think literal and figurative are the same thing. How can you have a conversation with these people when you can't agree on what words mean? Art is subjective. You cannot say this season is objectively better. That is nonsensical talk. You can't objectively prove any art is good or worse than some other piece of art. You can't. It's subjective. Art is subjective. There's no ruler you can stick up to it. And why am I having to explain to people who are probably old, they're at least probably in their 30s in some cases, and they don't understand the difference between objective and subjective?
Oh, I think there are people older than that who don't know the difference.
This is what Star Trek is now. This is dystopia. This is this Section 31 crap. This isn't just a little piece of this larger Star Trek universe. This is the majority of what Secret Hideout is all about. And I've made comments before that this stuff started way back in Deep Space Nine. And I know people in our comments get all upset with me because I have problems with Deep Space Nine. I do like a lot of Deep Space Nine, but I've got problems with Deep Space Nine. This is one of the reasons. This stuff that's coming home to roost now, this is by Deep Space Nine being allowed to go as far as it did, and this is going well past that line. Why should the Federation even survive in this Secret Hideout iteration? The lighting is depressing. It was funny because when Picard and Crusher were talking and they said something like, have we reached a point where, morality doesn't matter anymore, or some crap like that. And you and I looked at you and I said, yes, we have. They've reached a point. What this is to me, and this is going down a political route, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is trying to justify the Western world's torturing and doing horrible crap to people in the name of we're fighting for right. So if we torture people to get the information, it's okay to do that. I saw that when they were doing the Saru stuff, and I'm seeing that here. And this is all falling back to our current situation, the world we live in now. We already talked about L'Rell given a bomb to be installed as a puppet dictator. The messaging behind these Secret Hideout shows is that of a morally, I'm trying to find the words, there is lacking morality. They know what they're doing could have consequences. Dr. Culber spoke up and Saru said the heck with it. Amoral would mean they didn't care. They do know stuff is wrong. They just do it anyway. And their justification is it's for the greater good. How many atrocities have been committed in the lifetime of our real life human species in the name of a greater good? And that's what this stuff is. I don't understand, like I said at the beginning of the video, people who think for them, Star Trek is about spaceships that have a certain design and about an LCARS interface system. And if you like Deep Space Nine and all that Section 31 stuff, then this is probably the perfect show for you. It's morally ambiguous. It has member berries galore, so you're going to get your spaceships, your musical tones, because when the changeling pretending to be Tuvok was talking to Seven over the view screen, they were playing some Voyager music when Seven was discussing a certain thing. So if you like member berries, starship designs, LCARS displays, and the morality of Star Trek doesn't really, like, that's a non-thing for you. You just want to see cool shooting, and we live in this world now where torturing is okay because it's for the greater good. I think you'll love this show. I really do think that this is the show for you. And the people who like this show, I start to question where they stand on certain real-life issues. Probably not nice of me to do so, but it is what it is. The member berries, here's this. Like, Laura was taking away all of these memories, at least at first in the scene. And I was joking with Molly. I was like, look, Laura's Terry Metalis in Secret Hideout, and Data would bring up, hey, this is important to me. This is Trek lore. And then Laura was like, give me that. That's mine now. And then he, like, threw it over his shoulder like Luke Skywalker lightsaber-wise. And I was like, yeah, that's Terry Metalis in Secret Hideout. And to treat that body with such irreverence like that, no, it's like an old shoe or something. Don't worry about Picard's body. No big deal. They didn't feel a need to take the body with them for some sort of burial. I mean, heck, in Generations, didn't Picard at least throw a bunch of boulders on top of Captain Kirk as a burial?
Yeah.
Because Picard doesn't even get that.
Well, I believe Kirk's body is also on Daystrom Station now, so...
Yeah, this series I don't count as canon. This series can't be canon. It depends how you define canon. Is the IP holder saying this is part of their continuity? Yes. But in continuity, as far as making sense of the rest of the lore, this cannot fit in with any of the continuity. There are so many breaking things that they do in this series. All 3 seasons. This season is no real difference than seasons 1 or 2. People who are saying, yes, it is, it's an improvement. It's only an improvement because you like seeing the old actors. That's my personal opinion, but that's the only difference, and you like hearing the older music and the member berries. But there is stuff as ridiculous as eating car batteries in this season. So I do not understand how anybody can say with a straight face, this season, it's not perfect, but it's better. Yeah, it definitely isn't perfect, but it's not better either. It's just garbage. This is the same crap. I do not understand how this is in any way, Shaw, a representation of Starfleet at its best, a Starfleet captain. This guy he's a loser in every sense of the word. And I don't understand why people are praising this as some breakthrough character that they want to base another series on. I don't know, maybe our society now is just so full of snark, and they're just happy with incompetence and seeing just massive mistakes being made left and right in the real world. Maybe that's all they know right now, and they look around and go, Shaw fits in with that. He would fit in well on the TV series The Office as some bumbling, incompetent leader. That's what Shaw is. He's a character from The Office.
I guess that's just what a lot of people like watching now. I don't. I'm glad this series is almost over because I don't know how anybody thinks this is good Star Trek. This is not. This is showing Starfleet officers to be utterly incompetent.
Well, they turn it into, well, I know it's not perfect. Like somehow by just saying that, it means I know there are problems, but. There's no but. It's garbage. The only way that your statement of it's not perfect is accurate is if it's not perfect means this is complete garbage. That's the only way it makes sense. By throwing that out there, I know it's not perfect, but the but is, but it's a piece of crap. I know it's not perfect, but it's a piece of crap. That's what this is. There are so many parallels to what they're doing here, including their solution, which Molly hasn't covered yet. However, we talked about this 4 or 5 episodes ago. We suspected Terry Matalas was going to rip off Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica this exact way. We predicted this 4 or 5 episodes ago, what he was going to do. We didn't get any advanced screenings, and that's what he did. It's not just a little, there's some little nuances. No, Terry's ripping off the premise of Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica as far as how the whole thing got started, the decommissioning of the Galactica, all those old weapons that were in the museum now, which everybody was offended by, going back to this show and nobody wants the fat Enterprise anymore. This is ripping off Battlestar Galactica. If you didn't see it, you don't have to watch the whole series. Go watch the 2-part miniseries that started the whole thing off. Watch that. Not the whole miniseries, am I saying they ripped off? Watch the premise about the Battlestar Galactica decommissioning, what the Cylons did to breach the defenses of the colonial fleet, and the solution on how Galactica was able to battle the Cylons, an old, beat-up warship, how it was able to survive Cylon attacks when the other more modern Battlestars couldn't. It's the same freaking story, those elements. Now, all the other stuff, the 12 colonies and all that, yeah, that's not the same. But the premise, Frontier Day, Battlestar Galactica Decommissioning Day, the parallels are ridiculously close. People who say this is so different than the previous 2 seasons of Picard. Really? This looked any different than those copy-paste starships from season 1 with the Attack of the Killer Flowers. Really? When the octopus was trying to push us away, the Borg octopus or whatever that thing was, through our universe. Really? I looked, there were little variations in the type of ships, but as far as just being a bunch of crap pasted on the screen together, this was no different than that scene from season 1, the flower battle. It didn't look any different. It looked bad. Terry Trek sucks. This one offended me on a level I can't even put into words. This was horrible. What this reminded me of, to go back to what Molly was saying, if you've seen the second Back to the Future movie, remember the 80s bar? Remember when they got everything kind of mishmashed wrong in that bar? That's what this is. It's taking Star Trek, trying to fit it in with some other science fiction that was popular, and saying, look, here it is. I don't know if people are not figuring out, there is absolutely zero new in this series. This is doing nothing to move the franchise forward. I do not understand at all what people are defending, because I've seen people ponder online. They have said, what if Terry sticks the landing? What if he really sticks the landing here? And by the way, this is not going to stick the landing after episode 9. But even if I assume episode 10 is the best thing I've seen in 25 years, that still does not make up for 9 episodes of garbage. This series is a failure no matter what happens next episode, because I had to waste how many hours watching this garbage, even if they give us the one good episode next week. And I don't think they are going to give us a good episode next week. The only good thing that happened in this episode is Shaw died. I was so, maybe happy is a mean thing to say, but the actor didn't die, just his character. I hate Shaw. He represents everything bad about what this series, what this franchise is now. I've heard people defend Shaw as saying, well, what Shaw's doing is filling in for the actual Trekkie who was watching all this ridiculous stuff and all this secret hideout Trek. If that's what they were doing, they failed. All he is a jackass. He offers nothing. People have compared him to Captain Jellicoe. He's not anything like Captain Jellicoe. Captain Jellicoe, he was competent. The reason he was an interesting change of pace was he wanted to do things different than Picard, but he still knew what he was doing. He just did it differently. Shaw is incompetent. I've heard people say, I like Shaw just because he's an asshole. These people want to hang around assholes? And then I've heard them follow up, yeah, just like Captain Jellicoe. Yeah, that guy wasn't even really an asshole. You don't know what you were watching. He wasn't an asshole in The Next Generation. He just did something differently that rubbed people the wrong way. Shaw is incompetent. When he died, and then that as he was dying, he called Seven by her proper name, and then he just died, and I'm like, I laughed when that happened. It was such a ridiculous death, but I was so glad Shaw is no longer a problem. And for all you people who wanted Captain Shaw the Titan series, looks like that's not happening. Too bad. Stop supporting this stuff. It's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed supporting this stuff. If you really enjoy Star Trek, how can you watch this? It is minimizing every episode that airs. It makes it harder to watch The Next Generation. I know. I've tried. I have so much trouble trying to rewatch Next Generation. Luckily, one more episode, this crap is done. And maybe in a year or two, when my memory fades on it, I can go back to The Next Generation and just forget all this happened. Terry Trek was the perfect cherry to put on top of this sundae. He took this garbage, said, I'm going to still make garbage, but I'm going to put member berries in there, and there you go. And people, if you want to live in the past and just get mashups of what came before and other science fiction shows, our society, Western culture, I can see why we're getting ready for a great fall, because art is usually a good example of when a culture has nothing to offer humanity anymore. We in the Western world have nothing to offer the world in our current configuration anymore. We don't. This is a sign of the times we live in. A hard fall is getting ready to happen. Once or twice is homage. 100 times, 1,000 times is not homage. That's just a mashup of crap together. And people who say, you know, nothing new, everything's been done already, you can't do anything new. Maybe that's true. I don't buy that, but maybe that's true. But the English language has 26 letters in their alphabet. Who knows how many words? I'm pretty sure all the permutations of valid word strings have not been done yet. Yes, maybe you are inspired by somebody and you do your own take on it. You transform it. But you need to transform it. You can't just lift it. It reminds me of in the 90s, or maybe it was late 80s, that interview with Vanilla Ice.
Ding, 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 ding. That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding, 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 ding. That little bitty change. It's not the same.
Vanilla Ice was like, nah, it's just that one note, man. See, that one note transformed it. One note doesn't transform an idea. Everybody knows he stole that. I think even kids now know the legend of Vanilla Ice. So he became a pariah when it came to music. It did not give a good send-off to the Next Generation crew. It didn't even give a different send-off than All Good Things. It ended the same freaking way.
Well, it's happened before. It will happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about more Galactica references that were taken, not just this season, but last season. You could even argue the first season by outlawing mechanical men. I'm not going to get into that because that will go down a rabbit hole. We could make a 2-hour video just on that. I do not understand the people. I appreciate you have all this emotion tied into this franchise. Don't you want something new? As I said in one of my comments, Don't you think Picard and company deserve their own original story, their own original script? The Borg story here, we've seen this before. The poker table at the end, we've seen it before. That bridge, we definitely saw before. I do not understand. Are people really sitting in with their curtains closed just waiting to die? Are we really the last generation of Star Trek, meaning the final generation? I do not get this. I am so happy this series is done. It is done. I don't have to watch this anymore. There should be stories on every planet you can tell. Ideas we've never thought about. Life forms we've never thought about. Ways of looking at things we've never thought about. That's what Star Trek is supposed to be. Yes, it's a mirror to our current society, but also showing where we can grow to. We don't know everything as a culture, as a species of people. We don't know everything. It is sheer effing hubris to know everything's been done before. That is the pinnacle of sheer effing hubris.